we can run with that. All right, let's give it a sec. Let's see if we get everyone up and running here.
The CIA is shooting us with lasers from orbit, putting a dome of no connection over us, trying to cut us off.
Here we go. I see we're live on YouTube. And not yet on Rumble, but we got people watching, so we'll come on. Since we're late, explain why we're late, or
Yes.
if we explain further why we're late, is that just going to get us in more trouble with the wrong people?
Who knows?
Who knows?
Somebody came up to us and offered us a lot of money to not have unauthorized caucus today. They said you can keep going back to what you're doing next week.
But yeah, we're more valuable. We're more valuable here than we are, or we're more valuable in other pursuits than we are here. So yeah, no, something like that. Okay, well, we're going to take off and get going here. Let me go ahead and pre-apologize for any audio glitches or video hiccups you hear, or if we're real fuzzy, because we're going to broadcast in lower definition today, although that may actually be a good thing. People can't see us clearly, but we're having some significant internet issues here, and it is very odd, the timing of it. About 5 minutes before our live stream, our upload ability tanks. It completely disappears. Coincidence? We will let you know what we think. We'll figure that out. But we're going to run to it, and we're going to do a little bit of a shorter caucus today because we already had a deadline, and then this came up, and whether it's the CIA messing with us because they didn't like that we talked about the Epstein files, or if it's just the internet service provider here being wicked nasty, we'll find out. But in the meantime, welcome. Thank you for being here. It's Unauthorized Caucus. It's Newsday. It's Noonsday. It's Thursday. It's noon-ish, and this is time for an Unauthorized Caucus. But we'll go ahead and remind you right up front. I'll plow through it. Go like, share, subscribe wherever you are. Share this around. We have got to overcome these tech issues, whether it's shadow banning or throttling, or if this is just us purely trying to get to a new leap of technology. You can help us by spreading the word, and go to phyllisschlafly.com, sign up for the email list, and get the resources afterward. And of course, if there's a problem here and it looks sketchy because of the internet, moving forward, we're now going to have a more solid version so that a last week doesn't happen again.
Mm-hmm.
Good episode, but your broadcast quality wasn't that great, so the audio wasn't that great. If that actually happens again, I'm going to be able to crank out a very clear audio, clear video version for everyone to be able to see after the fact. So make sure you sign up for the email list.
I'm not sure if we're live on Rumble.
Are we live on Rumble? It ought to be, but if we're not going, I'll fix that while we dive into it. I know we're going over on YouTube, and we got quite a few folks watching. So
we got people waiting for us on Rumble.
Big news day, it seems. Yeah, that's true. There is a big news day. Let's dive off. First of all, New Hampshire happened this week. Kari Lake's leaks happened this week. The lake leakers. What do we have? What do we have about that? That's going on right now. And what do you think? New Hampshire primary. Let's just hit a couple of things and then talk about what we want to talk about. What happened with the New Hampshire primary? What do you think?
Mm-hmm. Well, the New Hampshire primary, it was surprising how close it was. But when you realize that it's an open primary and deranged liberals can come in and vote for whoever they want to, then it makes a lot of sense why Nikki Haley got so many supporters. And I think CNN reported the night of that 70% of Nikki Haley's votes came from people not registered as Republican, whereas 70% of Trump's votes did come from people registered as Republican, which kind of makes sense, the breakdown. It's like so really when it comes down to it, Trump got 70% of the Republican vote, and Haley only got 30%. That other significant margin was the globalists, the libtards, the deranged freaks that are ruining our country, and they're getting back behind her. So really makes you wonder, why do these people like Nikki Haley so much? Because she is not America first. She is not going to transform our country. She is not going to do what we need to do for us to get back on track. So yeah, that's very important to consider.
Yeah. Historic levels. The two things I want to point out about New Hampshire: Trump got the most votes ever received by a single candidate in the primary of any party in New Hampshire ever. Beat out the last record holder, which was Bernie Sanders in 2016. That is huge. Nay, huge. It's huge. But that combined with the fact of just looking at the pure numbers, exit polls from CNN, MSNBC, as unpredictable and unrealistic as some of those are, I think if you trends, a lot of Democrats, because there's not really a contested primary, write-in stuff aside, there's not a contested primary. A lot of Democrats hopped over and were, meddling in the Republican Party primary. So you start to look at all those numbers and possibilities. It's very interesting. We just ran a mini general election in New Hampshire and Trump won.
Right.
I mean, it's not exactly scientific, but still, we've got a lot of those elements at play. That to me bodes very well for the fact that this is what people want. And this is, again, absent fraud, a huge possibility looking forward to November of 2024.
Yeah. So I agree completely.
It's very interesting. So,
but yeah, now that we're live on Rumble, thank you for joining us real quick. We were just having some internet issues, but now we're here and now we're back. So like we always say, sign up for the email list and you'll get all the goodie bags of interesting information as soon as this unauthorized caucus is done.
Yep, you absolutely will. We're going to surmount our tech issues and see if someone's fighting us or what is happening. But
the globalists
are the World Economic Forum.
That's what they were meeting at Davos about. They were like, we got to stop unauthorized caucus.
The Davos dandies were worried about Mason and Ryan and our unauthorized caucus. You know what? Actually, we're going to stick with that line. I like that.
Yeah.
But that happened. And then, of course, yesterday, and I'll just give the quick synopsis. Yesterday, big news was Kari Lake. This whole week, Kari Lake leaked a tape, or someone leaked a tape that Kari Lake seemingly obviously recorded. The Republican Party chairman, the former Republican Party chairman of Arizona, literally got caught on tape trying to bribe her from people back out east to get out of the Senate race, offering incredible things. And it was literally like listening to someone who thought that they were in The Godfather, I guess, because it's just, we got powerful people. What is this about control? She says. He goes, it's not about control. It's about being on the team. Like I'm imagining they're in some sort of restaurant eating pasta. Like this guy had very interesting, not very smooth, but he got caught. The deep state is real. Go listen to the wink from yesterday on the Pro America Report, and we'll talk a lot more about this. The deep state is real. It's there. And there's riddled with problems. It's very interesting. So that is a big thing that happened. But what is going on right now is what we wanted to talk about today, which will be a truncated conversation and maybe more for later. But there is a constitutional crisis of great magnitude brewing out of, shocker, Texas, of all places.
My homeland.
You're my homeland. Well, you're from Austin.
Greg Abbott's also in Austin. Keep that in mind.
I know. I'm just kidding. Do you want to give a brief synopsis, or would you rather we've got a brief synopsis that we can actually put in, but long story short, what's gone on and led up to this? Court cases amounting to what?
Right. So it goes back a while of, Biden gets into office and he is not defending our border whatsoever and has actually created a catastrophe that is ongoing. And because it's ongoing, it's seldom newsworthy. But looking at Todd Bensman and the research he's done on this, I mean, he's been detailing ever since a year into the Biden administration how bad this is getting and put it all together in a book called Overrun. Very good book detailing this. So all the way back in 2021, I think Abbott started saying, okay, well, then Texas law enforcement is going to start enforcing border law. They're going to start enforcing the border because the federal government won't. And then there's some pushback from the federal government because that's technically the federal government's responsibility. However, Texas does have a clause in their constitution that is, they're legitimately empowered by the full faith and force of our federal system that they are allowed to declare an invasion and defend their own borders, which is exactly what Greg Abbott did, because it is an invasion. It's an invasion, and the commanders are NGOs that are, supranational organizations working outside of our country and, manipulating it so these migrants can get in under false pretenses. And their foot soldiers are literally the cartels that are smuggling people in and committing atrocities and making tons of money off of this, which is allowing them to traffic more drugs, traffic people, and all around it's a bad thing. So, but then things really started developing over the last weekend.
Right.
And I was in Texas and I was afraid we were going to secede and I would never get back here.
sitting on the tarmac somewhere going, well, I hope we take off out of the last plane before. No.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, basically what happened is there's been a fight. A lower court basically said, yes, the federal government's, no, the federal government's not allowed to come in and take down the razor wire at the border pass, blah, blah, blah. And then this week, was it this week or was it late last week? No, it was this week. It was Monday, right?
Yeah, Monday. It was on Monday.
Monday, the Supreme Court, and this is a very interesting sticking point. Let me go ahead and tell people we've referenced her quite a bit, Margot Cleveland, is one of the primary legal writers for the Federalist and several other places. She's got a really good Twitter feed, X feed, a really good a bunch of other stuff to look at. She said, just a reminder, when people say Abbott's defying a Supreme Court ruling, she was very clear. Abbott is not defying a Supreme Court ruling. The court vacated an injunction against the federal government. So it's not ordering Texas to do or not do anything. What they're doing is reversing or erasing an injunction that said the feds can't remove Texas state's property. That's a very interesting thing. So I mean, it's just this is layered in some very consequential stuff, but it's also layered in a lot of legalese, and it is very much confusing to people when you dive into this. So that was one point that I thought, oh, that's interesting, because of course the news is saying what they're going to say, but it's not like the Supreme Court told Texas to do something or not to do something. It's basically untelling the feds you can't do that.
It's saying the feds can't not take down the razor wire, but that's not the same as saying now and forever they can. Isn't
government wonderful? Isn't it great? No. So long story short, this leads up to this week. Yesterday, actually, the Supreme Court says this. Everyone wonders what's going to happen because the feds are going to come, the Biden administration, and take away the razor wire Operation Lone Star, this border protection thing. It's really been going on since 2021. What's going to happen? And Greg Abbott releases, do we call it a manifesto? Like it really is almost a Federalist manifesto of some proportion, because he says essentially, first line, the federal government has broken the compact between the United States and the states. And then goes on, the executive branch has a constitutional duty to enforce laws protecting the states. They have failed. The Biden administration violated their oath to faithfully execute immigration laws. They've instructed their agencies to ignore statutes. It's like Declaration of Independence level grievances. We're going to go down the list and say what they have done. It really is pretty incredible. So this is the state of Texas under Greg Abbott basically setting up what I think has kind of been talked about for a while. What's going to happen when a state finally tells the feds no? Like, who's going to back down first? Like, we're playing a big game of chicken right now, because that's never. I mean, you could argue that we've had this happen before, but this isn't really a repeat at all of the Civil War and of the mid 1900s. Let's be honest. That was two very distinct geographic locations in addition to two very distinct ideologies and what was happening and what we are and aren't allowed to do, or what government is and isn't allowed to ban. Like, you could go down, because it's people complained at Nikki Haley for her answer on what the government. Well, yes, but slavery, states' rights, government levels, and what they are and aren't allowed. It was all intertwined together. Like, these are all kind of part and parcel of the same thing. So it's disingenuous to say it wasn't about slavery. It kind of was, but it's also disingenuous to say it was only slavery and not how government works and can enforce, because that's kind of what it was too. Like, it was all together.
It was states' rights regarding slavery. Now this is states' rights regarding the border.
But that's the thing. This now is very unpredictable and has absolutely no bearing. Really, we can't almost hardly draw anything from the last time that this kind of showdown happened, because now there's no geographical alliances, really. It's nothing. You look at the map. I was looking at this earlier.
I found a map too of all the state governments that came out.
Well, but that's the thing. Your map looks more current than mine, because originally it was Montana, South Dakota, Virginia, Georgia, Florida. But then Jeff Landry in Louisiana said something. Jim Justice, Jim Justice, right? The West Virginia governor said something. There were lots of folks coming out and saying, no, we stand with Texas on this.
Lots of governors.
Lots of governors, and from all over the lower 48. So it's a very interesting dynamic that's moving right now. But at the base of it, Texas is essentially declaring we have the right to protect not just our sovereignty, but our citizens. This is a self-defense argument, about protecting our citizens and our sovereignty. And you're not doing it, so we will. In fact, this is our job. And if you try to stop us, you're not allowed to. We won't let you. Now, what does that mean? Like, what's the what if? Well, I don't think anyone's actually articulated that, because none of us want that to happen. But that's a very interesting what if. And this is it. This is the showdown.
The American people want the border closed, but they don't want a civil war. And I don't think we're going to get a civil war. And I don't think we should even really agitate for I think it's good for the conflict between Texas and the federal government to increase, because I think that it's going to look bad for the Biden administration and help Trump in 2024 when they see the Biden administration openly and brazenly, trying to keep the borders open and remove barriers for illegal immigrants to get into this country. But we don't want it to escalate much further than that, because that gives the feds a pretense to be like, oh, look at these people. They're already, trotting out the whole insurrection and treason line against Trump. You're an insurrectionist. Now the risk I see is they start coming after Texans for insurrection,
Right.
Once again, which would be a major issue. But and it's hard to see how, if they start taking that line, how the conservative movement in the United States gets a win off of that. But I think that, you're always safe kind of betting on things don't get too crazy, because the world doesn't get too crazy that quickly. So especially leading up to the election later this year, I think that this will certainly help Trump.
Right. And I think this is a big explanation for New Hampshire, because we were talking about all the dynamics. This kind of plays in. New Hampshire is not exactly a big socially conservative state. Now, and this is actually a conversation in the hallways here earlier. What does or doesn't count as social issues anymore, because they've kind of been separated out. Still, you can't claim that this is the Bible Belt propping up Trump, because maybe you could call that about Iowa or South Carolina, but not New Hampshire. And New Hampshire delivered a decisive, a historic, we talked about that, a historic victory for Trump in terms of numbers. Like, just as much as you can, the Iowa caucuses had such low turnout, you can't say that's representative of Trump momentum. Well, New Hampshire sure was, because New Hampshire had record numbers. That state is more concerned about immigration than abortion. Plain and simple. Can't call it the Bible Belt issues. People are hot about what's going on when it comes to the economy, when it comes to the border. Both of these things are intrinsically tied together in my mind too. But these issues matter, and people see the leadership deficiencies currently in office, and they see the people who they believe will fix it. I think these two things are kind of reflective of each other. So, this is interesting. Now, okay, I do want to say, when it comes to this, make no mistake, when we're talking about, the showdown that is being set up over this, there are still court things to be done. So the Supreme Court essentially reversed or like I said, erased an injunction that had been put down against the court, but this is still brewing in the Fifth Circuit. Basically, what had happened is the rulings that we got to were a result of a panel, and it's going to be now heard, I believe, if I read all this correctly in the timeline, this is going to be heard en banc, which means the whole court, right? The entire Fifth Circuit, every judge will be now looking at this, and it's going to be very interesting, because they're talking about how, there's a February 7th hearing, which is why you're not going to see federal troops marching into Texas, and we're like watching the showdown of some movie style civil war beginning. That's not what's going to happen, because February 7th there is a hearing where the full U.S. circuit, the full U.S. Court of Appeals is going to be reviewing the 2-1 panel decision. And that, because of what has already been said and how things have been granted in what order, everyone seems readily available of the opinion that's going to be rendered as an opinion in favor of Texas, that they are allowed to, in fact, continue doing this. And that would then be a court telling the Biden administration, take a hike. You can't cut down Texas's wire and state property. What do you guys do? Wow, this is a complete side note. Is it Texas's or Texas with the apostrophe at the end? What do y'all prefer?
I say Texas's.
Okay, I'm going to go with that too, because I just wondered. It was just a moment there. Welcome to your day in grammar with, homeschool dad and a guy married to a school teacher. Like, we have these discussions, and those have to be clarified. These are the real things, people. It's what matters.
I think both work.
Both work, but one's better, and we'll just use the better. No, I'm kidding. But anyway, this is still there is current pending court review and hearings upcoming. So it's not like everyone's just, what's happening next? Well, a hearing on February 7th. That's what's happening next. Right. And by all appearances, these upcoming hearings appear to be very favorable to Texas's case that we get to do this.
Right.
This is something we're allowed to do to protect. But this was interesting, and this is where I wanted to boil it down. When it comes to those of us messaging toward getting people on our side this year. It's an election year. Conservatives are trying to convince people why this matters, why we're right, why you should vote for someone who supports this, not the people who obviously oppose it. Ed made an interesting point, and y'all will see it. If you're on the email list, you'll see the wink today. He talks about how, yes, we could go into all of the economic, and I wondered, because I know we've both listened to this, and it's just been published. He beat us today. I don't like that, but we won't let it happen again, folks. It's the internet. We don't even have to talk about all of the things. They're important issues. Drugs coming over the border, terrorism, or terrorism, drugs, migration, how it affects economy and jobs, all these different things. All of these are important. But we honestly don't need to go any farther when we tell people why the border crisis is a crisis. Then this is a matter of self-defense.
Right.
This is a national security threat of the greatest proportions that we have ever seen against our nation, because we have a free flow of people coming through, and we're past anecdotal. It's scientific. Video after video after video after encounter after interview after encounter of people coming across the border who are not from Central or South America.
Right.
We have folks from the Middle East. We have folks from Europe. We have folks from, African nations that are up in the, the Muslim center of influence in the north side. We have an incredible amount of folks coming through that are very connected to regions and countries that are very connected to radical terrorism and the effort to destroy the West, predominantly America, the great Satan across the globe.
Right. As well as from China.
Spies, and not even counting, spies from our other adversaries and enemies. This is, I don't even have to go any farther. I've got all these other reasons why the border is a crisis.
Right.
But this is the biggest national security crisis in my lifetime, probably all the way back to when the Russians were threatening to shoot nukes at us. This is it. This is the existential level national security crisis. We don't even have to talk about the rest of it beyond that, but there's also so much more. Do you think we're approaching a point where people will actually this year en masse agree with that and allow that to drive their voting decision? Or do you think they already did and the left just took the election anyway?
Yeah, no, I think they definitely do, because that was a major issue that won Trump 2016. And it's only gotten worse, and it has gotten out of control worse. And people see that, that's right. And now everybody sees that, because it's become it's become an issue of the way this country works, the way that we're going to deal with immigration. It's become a constitutional issue, and the way that the balance of powers between the states and the federal government works. And that's something that cannot be ignored, because that's, that was the question once we had declared independence. That was the question of how we're going to set up this country. Our Articles of Confederation versus the Constitution. And asking that question again about this specific issue has monumental consequences on the entire way our political system functions, and the responsibilities of the state and the federal government, and the limits they have on one another.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that I think that most people already were on our side with this issue going all the way back to 2016. And I think after this, it's going to be a landslide for Trump.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you.
Absent fraud.
Absent fraud. And that's as someone on Facebook pointed out. Betty said, absent fraud, that's the sticking point. And I was like, and what a sticking point it is, because it is a big deal. But that's a whole caucus for another day. But yeah, this is going on. Now, this is big. I want to say, we talk quite a bit about Greg Abbott, and we talk quite a bit about Ken Paxton around here. I know, and this just kind of harkens to the Trump argument. Whenever the Phil Schlafly Eagles, whenever Ed or John and Andy Schlafly, who write the weekly column, whenever there's a lot of praise going around for something really good that Ken Paxton did or Greg Abbott was doing, there are always the detractors that come out. Yes, but, and I get that. I completely agree with it. Looks like Ken Paxton has some establishment baggage going on. He's been around for a while. This is not perfect. Greg Abbott, I've had some things that I disagreed with him on. But to the point of Phyllis Schlafly and to the point of our arguments around here, often Jesus isn't on the ballot. We're dealing with a bunch of imperfect people. We've got to figure out and make do what's best, because there is no, perfect. There never will be. So in this situation, don't ever hear us excusing any past necessarily by talking about what someone is doing right in an area. And that's where we are right now. Greg Abbott, for better or worse, for other things in the past, Greg Abbott is absolutely on the right path to set this up
Mhm.
as a constitutional issue.
Right.
And this is where I think so many of us get frustrated, is often when there's a lawsuit involved or an issue ends up before the Supreme Court. It's so incredibly narrow.
Mhm.
And we end up not getting these big, broad rulings.
Right.
And the folks who brought Dobbs v. Jackson to the Supreme Court, they did the right thing. They asked the right question in the right way, and they got the court to take it.
Mhm.
And the big, broad question, the legal foundations of Roe, were challenged themselves instead of this one tiny little area. In his comments, which we're going to link to his letter, we're going to link to some of the commentary by Margot Cleveland and a bunch of other stuff. He is invoking constitutional language at a very important level. Make no mistake, what he's doing is setting up a very, very good foundation to have this discussion. And right now we've got a pretty decent court system to have it in, I would argue. 10 years ago, I wouldn't have wanted to have this conversation in the courts, but now I would. I'll take it. So, you read him and his letter, and then see all of the ways that it applies into the constitutional language. We really are setting up the federalism showdown of probably the next 50 years. This has been brewing for some time, and I think this may finally be the flashpoint where we start to have it out. And I mean, make no mistake that just like judges ignored for so long, we complained about activist judges who just ignored lawmakers and reinterpreted to their heart's content at the level of lawmaking. We could have an executive branch that's just like, I don't care if the legislative doesn't want me to, and or hasn't signed off on it at bare minimum. I don't care if the judges say no, we're going to do this anyway. That's where you see flashpoints of, well, now we have to literally solve this with guns. Like that's nutty stuff. That's stuff that none of us want. Well, apparently some of us do, because people, federal agencies are forcing issues, and it's big. This may finally be the flashpoint on this issue that we've talked about for so long. So
yeah,
that's it. We wanted to talk about it because a lot has happened, and a lot of it's legalese, and then also a lot of it has happened very quickly. And the news is awful about giving you any details that actually are relevant and matter.
True.
So that's it. I'm trying to, let me double check one more time. We'll go over here. I know I got a couple of text questions. Someone asked, what do you think Biden's next move will be with the Texas border? Do you think he'll actually send troops to cut the wire? I don't think that we're going to see anything until after the panel, after the full circuit court has had a chance to review the panel's decision, which is kind of one of the big steps that led us to where we are. I don't imagine we're going to see anything. So not before February 7th.
Right.
Although I could be wrong. I mean, the Biden administration's been pretty pushy. The DOJ has just done whatever they wanted. So
right. I mean, yeah, they might try.
And
who knows what happens then? Who knows what happens then?
Who even knows? Sanctuary cities are feeding into the impact of illegal immigration. That's true. And that's a whole big, you want to secure the border. I mean, we've said for a long time, cut off some of the incentive for people to come here. And that's maybe not as much, as effective as securing the border, but actually it might be more. You could argue if you cut off the incentives for everyone coming here.
Right.
All right. Well,
no wonder people want to come here when we're offering them free places to stay.
If you really crack down on asylum, and you really crack down, like fake asylum seeking, which we know happens in great numbers. If you really crack down on all of the incentives once you get into the system, and you're going to have to face a court and then potentially really explain why you're here or get sent back, you get rid of a lot of folks showing up in the first place because there's no benefit to it. So that's a whole conversation about solutions that is worth having. So, yeah. Oh, good. Okay, there we go. Someone, folks are watching who are asking these questions. I'm getting some feedback. But yeah. All right. Well, anything else we want to cover before we call it for today?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Like, subscribe, comment, and we'll love to see you next week. Go on over to phyllisschlafly.com and plug your email into that email box. Yeah, we've got some good stuff coming up. So this is the call again. Let us know what you want us to talk about. And we're going to tinker with a few things and try to get some of our technology figured out so that we're not having issues that happen at 11:52 a.m. Central Time. That keeps happening to us. So, all right. Very good. Yeah. And yes, if you text us as someone is finding out, I'm going to respond to you. Just like if you hop in the comments, we're talking to you right here. It is nice, isn't it now? Anyway, this is live. There's no movie magic here. All right, everybody. We'll talk to you next Thursday. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on the next Unauthorized Caucus.